We will call this meeting to order of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency on November 13th, 2024. Tara, would you do the roll call, please?
Matt Conant.
Present.
Harm Baines.
Present.
Bruce Johnson.
Here.
Bill Conley.
Here.
Todd Kimmelshoe.
Here.
Bo Shepard.
Here.
Mark Boomgarden.
Here.
Wade Kirchner.
Here.
Charlie Hoppin.
Here.
Gary Marler.
Here.
Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Here.
Thank you.
Consent calendar, and does any one of the board members want to pull something from the consent agenda to discuss?
Move to approve consent.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
1 through 5.
All right, we have some items. We'll move on to item 6, and that is information briefing on the Feather River Side Channel Project. And I will turn that over to Michael.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Mike Johnston. He's the president of the Sutter County Resource Conservation District. And Mike was good enough to offer to provide a presentation to the board, an informational presentation, give you an idea of what is being proposed here and the grant money that they've received, and he'll highlight that. I wanted to thank Mike for including Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency in their grant application. So they carved out some money in that grant for our team to review whatever plans they come up with to ensure that it's not detrimental to the flood safety system here along the Feather River. And there is, you'll see in one of Mike's slides, there's we are donating some in-kind contribution. That'll be my time as part of overseeing, the efforts of our team. So that's going to be in-kind services. But we do have over $40,000 to provide for our geotechnical and civil engineers to review their plans. So with that said, Mike, I turn it over to you.
First, let me thank you for inviting me, and thank you again for your support of this project.
I don't think your mic's on yet.
Is it on now? Thank you again for inviting me. First thing I want to do is thank you for your support. This is a project that I started 5 years ago, 2019, at I want to say the encouragement of my wife. We live on the levee. We have our house fronts the levee. And 5 years ago, as I'm sure all of you know, the levee and the river was a mess. People were living shoulder to shoulder inside the river. They were living shoulder to shoulder along 2nd Street from the Little League field all the way up to Whitaker Hall. It was dangerous to go up there. I'm an animal lover, and I happen to love border collies. And those dogs need an enormous amount of exercise. So I take them out on my bike every morning for a 6-mile ride up and down the levee. Well, 5 years ago, to do that, you ran a gauntlet of people who were difficult to get through, let me put it that way, as well as packs of dogs. During the first year or two that I was riding up and down there with my dogs, I was attacked 3 or 4 times by dogs. I actually got to a point where I picked up my bike and threw it at a group of dogs to fend it off from my dogs. My wife used to go up there and hike and run. She refused to do it anymore and said, "You need to do something." Me? What in the world can I do?
It didn't sound like she suggested that.
Well, she suggested it a number of times, let me say that. And finally I said, okay, what can we do? And she said that there was plans that were developed in 2001, the Feather River Parkway, which you all should be familiar with. In Yuba City, that portion, the Yuba City portion of the Feather River Parkway was completed. The original plans had 6 sections. The fifth and sixth section started at the Yuba City boat ramp and ran down to Shanghai Bend, and had not been completed. I never could figure out why it wasn't completed, but I said, okay, here. Dan Flores was kind enough to give me a copy of the plans. And I said, well, no, big deal. We'll just complete the next 2 sections. That's put me on a very long journey, because in order to get grants to complete projects like this, you need a design plan that's already done, because when you get a grant, you probably might already know, you usually have to get them completed in 2 years. Well, as I'm finding out, it takes 2 years just to design it, another 4 years to complete it. So as I started looking in to get grants, I found out that it was very difficult to get one if you didn't have a plan. We originally applied to the California State Park Department for a grant to complete those 2 sections of the Feather River Parkway. Basically, it was going to add trails along the river and make it so that it was a pedestrian and hiking trails, and maybe put some physical workout things there, and then completely restore the river. Remove the invasive plants, get the dead trees out of there and all that. It took from the time we started till the time I applied for that grant was about 2 years. These grants are very difficult to put together. It got returned down. I was pretty disappointed, because they had been very encouraging about it, because that river is so beautiful. Everybody who was involved in the grant process wanted to do something to help. But the Park Service wanted a more expansive programs, maybe some basketball courts or other recreational facilities down there. So initially I was really pretty discouraged, but again, my wife encouraged me that we just didn't get one grant, we'll go get another one. I then started doing some research. I found a grant from the National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Act. It was a 1-year grant for technical assistance. It didn't fund anything, but they provided me with guidance of how do you get a grant? Where do you start? It turns out that you start at the grassroots. You go to the service clubs, you go to the community events, you do surveys and find out if there's any support for it and if there's any opposition for it. As a result, everybody seemed to be for it, and every entity that I went and talked to was more than supportive of doing the project. It took a year, the first year of having that National Park Service grant, I realized how much work was involved in it. And we actually got them to renew the grant for the 2nd year. And I got the preliminary work done on it. And then it was going to find a grant. And I found out that the Wildlife Conservation Board, which actually has funded Wildlife Conservation Board actually will fund a project for the design part of it, and then it will fund it for the construction part. So I started looking at their material. I went through their past agendas and found a project very similar to my project that had been done by the Tehama County Resource Conservation District. I contacted them. They were putting in salmon side channels and doing a restoration on the river further up in Redding. And they recommended a biologist to me to come down and take a look at our project. I got him to came down. We started doing an inspection. And he was saying, "Oh, this beautiful area." And then all of a sudden he goes, "You have a gold mine here." I said, "A gold mine?" He said, "Yes." He said, "We're standing on a natural side channel that salmon, after they hatch, come down to these side channels. They feed and rest until they're strong enough to re-enter the river again and proceed down into the ocean." And I said, "You're kidding me." And he said, "No." And he said, "There's money for that." I said, "Okay, let's apply for one of those." So we started working on the grant, and we started in, I think, early 2023, and we just completed it about 6 months ago, submitted to WCB, and WCB has actually made the grant. We've been awarded $2,199,000 to complete this project. We have gone through everything. The only thing we're waiting for is a funding letter. Once they give you the grant, then you have to wait for the entities to send you a letter saying that the grant was committed. And so we've got a fabulous team of engineers, biologists, Department of Water Resources, Sabufka, some national support for it. And what it's going to be, see if I can get us to, this is the monies that we've got for this is the original monies that we've got for the grant. We got $30,000, thank goodness, from the Sutter County Board of Supervisors to get a grant writer to help us write this grant. It took, I think, 8 months to actually write the grant because you have to get engineers involved in it. You have to get their budgets. You have to get biologists involved. You have to find out where you're going to get your permits. You have to get permission and approval from all of the other entities along the river. Drew and Levy District 1 was the first place I went to and said, "If I can get this funded, will you support it?" And they did. They supported it from the very beginning. They just said at one point, "We support the project, but you don't have a chance in hell of completing it," which is, we did a public survey on it too, and the public survey was 85% was in favor of the project, and 89% said we didn't have a chance in hell of completing it. And let me tell you, it's been a chore. But the project itself starts at, let's see, I think he said I can. Starts at the top, the Yuba City boat ramp is the starting point for our property. The side channels will be right, see where the water, looks like a little frog or a salamander right there? That's Halpern's Lagoon right here. And Halpern's Lagoon is a natural side channel that has been closed by erosion, and there's no exit to it. So at a certain water levels, it opens up and Halpern Lagoon will flood, but the fish that get in there have no way of get out. It becomes a feeding channel for the birds. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the lagoon right here, and then put an exit channel right here. We're also going to come down a little further and put another one in right here that will go down through here. We wanted to put another one that was going to go through here, but talking to the engineers and everything, one of our concerns was if anything we did was going to change the flow of the river or interrupt it in any way. So all the construction that's going to be done is actually going to be on the outside of the river along the levee side, where we are just going to open the top of that lagoon and put the exit in, and then put another channel that will go over here and come out here. It's the total distance for the channel is about 1.5 miles. In addition to the 2 salmon channels that we're going to put in, We're also going to do a restoration along the river. We're going to remove all the invasive species that are there, and we're going to replant native plants. There is it's called a technical ecological knowledger practitioner. The woman who's going to do it is a Maidu Indian. She is famous for restorations. She's also an artist. And they're actually going to take DNA samples from the natural plants that are there to make sure that the plants that go back in are exactly native to this area. The other part of the restoration project is habitat restoration. As I'm sure you probably all know, the Feather River is a flyway for the birds coming in. And I know somebody was talking about that sandbar that's coming in at the confluence of the Feather and Yuba River. And I saw the pelicans down there today because they're coming in now to catch the fish coming down from both the Feather and the Yuba River. Sunday, I was just at a conference at Yuba College about a salmon spawning area that they're putting in at Beale Air Force Base that will feed fish down from the Yuba River and the Sutter and the Feather River where we're starting our project. It turns out that the Federal Conservation Board found out that that confluence of the Yuba and Feather River is the most important point on the river for the restoration of the salmon population. This is, again, the same map. The other part of it was that when we originally got this project, the land that we had went from the Yuba City boat ramp down to Shanghai Bend. And there was an additional piece of property that was owned by Fish and Wildlife that continued on from Shanghai Bend south down the river. And I had originally planned to ask Fish and Wildlife if they would let me put a bike path through there or a hiking path through their property. And they said, probably not, but we might be able to give you the property. So it took about 2 years of working with the Fish and Wildlife Department, and they actually granted Sutter County an additional 141 acres going south. So that the whole project now is it's 231 acres from the boat ramp all the way down to the end of the Fish and Wildlife property. So we've extended it down there. The design project is going to take approximately 2 years. It involves primarily water studies to find out what the heights of the water is going to be, what we have to do to make sure that the entrance to these fish channels are available to the fish at various water levels. And the other part of it is going to be restoration, which is going to take approximately 2 years to get the invasive plants out, put the new plants in, and the first 2 years is all design. We're going to not do any construction work. We're simply going to do monitoring and engineering testing to make sure that what we put in is going to work. It's going to increase the salmon population, and that it's not going to interfere with the river. Once that design project is completed, we'll reapply to the WCB for additional funding for the construction. The estimate for the additional construction right now is about $6 million. However, there's no telling what it will be in 2 or 3 years, whether it will be less or more. My assumption is it's going to be more. There have been so many people that have signed on to this program. I wanted to make sure that here's a copy of our budget just so you can see what's going on. The environmental planning permitting was $400,000. That's just to get permits. That startled me when I found out how much that was going to cost. The engineering is $1 million. Environmental planning and permitting was almost $400,000. Project management, $477,000. So all of these monies have been budgeted out to the various entities that are going to take care of it. They're simply waiting for funding to actually be awarded so that we have the money to spend. The Sutter County Resource Conservation District, we donated $40,000 in kind, just like Michael was saying about Sutter Buttes. For administration, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is going to do the same thing, $15,000 of additional testing. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is going to give us $50,000. I think Sutter Butte flood control initially was $4,000, but you said $40,000, so I'm going to add another zero in there somewhere.
No, that's the in-kind. We're carved into the engineering budget for the review.
Oh, okay,
at
yes,
40,000, yeah.
These are the people, some of the people who letters of support that we got. We got one from California State Senate District from Roger Nilo, Jim Gallagher, our minority leader, sent us a letter of support. Glenda Nelson from the Estam Umeka Maidu tribe, a very important partner. And when you do these grants, they're scored by points. How many points do you get? If you don't have an Indian tribe supporting your project and you're on any kind of a property along a river, you're not going to get the grant. They're also working with us to do the restoration projects because they're expert at returning property to its natural condition. Steve Smith, County Supervisor, and the Board of Supervisors of Sutter County have been unbelievably helpful to get me started with a $30,000 grant because I've been working on this project for 5 years with no funding. And to get all these engineers and biologists and everything to come down and look at this project and help with the design, help with the grant paperwork, it's been amazing. People are so supportive of the project that they're willing to donate their time to make sure that it happens. Chuck Wiley from the Sutter County Fish and Game, Tom Russer, Superintendent of Schools. We plan to put a lot of educational material in there about how the river works, the fish and the local habitat. Bob, I believe it's Boki, is the owner of JBT Marine. One of the things that they want to make sure that your grant is going to be economically beneficial to your county. I believe that this is going to be one of the most beneficial economical projects that Sutter County has experienced in a long, long time, because I think our tourist business is going to return. When the fish return, the economy, I think, is going to be bolstered quite a bit. And Kathy DeMille from SALOV has volunteered to help us with one of the problems that you have with a project like this is once you get it done, you got to maintain it. And there is no funding available for maintenance from any of these grants. They will help you build it and they will provide the money to build it, but they won't maintain it. SALOV has volunteered to help us along the way, keeping it maintained, because one of my central concerns at one point was, if we're going to build this thing, I don't want it to be destroyed in 2 or 3 years. Should be in perpetuity. Once we get the river restored and the salmon back on the river, we don't want it destroyed again. And I think that the way things are moving now, that there's going to be a good possibility of that. Most of the people have been moved out of the river. The river itself is a floodplain, which means it's a danger for anybody to live there, to camp there, or to put any debris or any non-licensed or permitted buildings in there. So there should be no one in that river. It's a floodplain. It's a hazard to the people who are there. It's a hazard to the residents that live along the river, and it's a hazard to emergency personnel who may have to go in there and save these people. As I said before, the grant's been awarded. We're simply waiting for the money to come in. And my belief at this point now is that once we get this started, it was going to return the river into one of the most beautiful spots in Sutter County. You've seen the fires and the destruction that people have done to the river. We're taking all of that out. We're going to restore it. If there's a downside to it, is the length of time it's going to take to do it. The 2-year period for the design, once the design is completed, probably it'll take us an additional 2 years in the construction to get the invasive plants out, put the new plants in, and then they say will take another 2 years for those plants to be established enough that they can be left by themselves. It's been a journey of joy so far, and I hope it keeps going that way. I think it's going to be one of the in my opinion, one of the best things that Sutter County can do. And the fact that it's being funded by outside money, we're going to get approximately, when this is done, probably $8 to $10 million injected into Sutter County for this project. Anybody have any questions? I'll tell you what. When I was there with a couple of biologists and the engineers were doing a thing, and I was talking to them about how long it had been worked on, they said, "What are you going to name this? The Mike Johnston Parkway or something?" I said, no. It's going to be called the Donna Johnston Memorial Project. If it weren't for Donna, I wouldn't be here, period. Not only was she the encouragement that got me moving to get involved in this project, she's been the technical assistant. She's the one that's helped write these grants. She's the one that's been a part of this the whole time. She is a partner with me in this. It's not me doing this, it's us doing this. But I give all praise to her, not to me. I'm just doing what I'm told. Anything else? Matt?
So, a lot of people may not be all familiar with all this, but there is a plan for the state to put from Discovery Park all the way up to the end of your project. And that would be incredible because people could ride bikes or whatever, they would jog, walk, whatever, from Sacramento all the way up to Yuba City. And pretty incredible if that ever happens. And I think if this is done, I think Sacramento will want to do the rest of it.
It's funny you mention that, Matt, because initially when I was working on the Parkway part of it, I had envisioned going all the way down to Discovery Park to make that connection, because I realized that we had it coming from the Yuba City part of it. If we get it to the Sutter County part, then you connect it to Sacramento, then you've got a real tourist attraction. You've got almost a hike along the river for 20 or 30 miles. I thought would be a great thing. I'm hoping they will. I will tell you this, though. Once you put in a natural habitat, we restore this. Fish and Wildlife has a white paper out on restoration versus recreation. And what it says is, if you have restoration, you should not have recreation. Because what happens is you let the people into these restored areas and they destroy them. So the habitat is destroyed. However, this paper goes on to say, we understand that there's got to be some symbiotic relationship between restoring these places and allowing the public to enjoy them too. So what they recommend is some restrictions on it. Like if you've ever, golf courses are probably the most visible, where if you go to a golf course, you'll have an area that's fenced off or something where they say you can't go in here. You would do the same thing along the river if there were habitat that needed to be protected. For instance, one of the things that we've been working on at the Resource Conservation District is putting in monarch habitats. My vision is to put in a monarch habitat on the river that will be a lot like the ones that are down south, so that it in and of itself becomes a tourist attraction. We put in a monarch habitat at the Sikh Temple in Yuba City. We put one in at Live Oak, and I intend to put one in the Feather River project too. So it's kind of a weighing thing of we don't want to, and one of the things that Wildlife Conservation Board wanted to make sure is that we had fishing access along the river too, so that would be built in. But as far as putting bike paths or something through it, probably, I doubt that we'll be able to do that, but I'm sure that we'll be able to put hiking paths in, which I used to do years ago, was take my dogs and walk along the river until it became too dangerous to do it, truthfully. Yeah, and another thing that I've done, and I encourage you to do with people you know, is encourage people to go down to that area. They've been, my research found out that there are people who used to go down to the Feather River on a regular basis and hadn't been down there in 20 years because they had heard these stories about how bad it was and it wasn't safe to go down there. And all props to Sutter County Board of Supervisors and to the Yuba City Police Department and the Sutter County Sheriffs of cleaning up that area now that it's become open now. You see people with their kids, strollers and something walking up and down the levees. Drew knows exactly what a change it's been. It's day and night, right? And people are now coming out. The more people that you can get on that area, the safer it'll become, and the less people you're going to have moving into it again. So I try to get everybody up there that I can to see it again and realize that this again is a part of Sutter County that's available for use for the residents of this county.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you very much for your presentation. We're glad we could partner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Mr. Chairman, as our staff, me and my team get involved in this project, I'll keep the board updated as we move it forward.
Appreciate it very much. We'll turn it over to Sean. And he can give us tell us how strong our financial position is.
Good afternoon. So this presentation covers financials through September, through the end of September. But periodically I'll interject some updates on that, where we are currently. So ending working capital as of September 30th was about 23.7 million, with 26.9 million or so for total pending and actuals. Difference about 3.17 million in effectively what we have is net pending financials, both expenditures and revenues. Operating revenue, we received with interest about 1 million for the previous fiscal year. We're still at a negative, if you recall from our last board meeting, we were at a negative balance for the operating revenue for the current fiscal year, although that typically changes come December. We start receiving the direct assessment bills. And then by January, February, we receive our first remittance payments from the counties. Capital revenue, currently for 23-24, we're looking at 7.5 million, I think is exactly where we landed, with 8.6 million or so in what's currently pending. Those will eventually, once we close the audit, any remaining difference between those two numbers, those revenues will roll over into the current fiscal year. But the current fiscal year, where we're currently at, and given light of the previous one, about 800,000 as of 9/30, which is all just received state payments, and about 3.8 million or 3.9 million, 3.8 million in pending. The difference, total difference between the two fiscal years, about 4.27 million. And so this outlines that a little bit. You'll notice the table on the left here. It's this one, right? Yeah, table on the left here. You can see the state anticipated revenues, the total assessments. This is only reflective of 23-24. 24, 25, like I mentioned, we haven't received anything yet. For the right-hand side, though, these pending state payments, the 4.26 million, it's actually, we're currently putting together packages which entail services from July to September, the end of September. Those amount to roughly about 750,000. They just haven't been entered in our system yet, and we're submitting them like it started really yesterday, I think, really submitting them. So I guess to summarize that, the additional 750,000 to those pending revenues. And then for expenditures, the paid expenditures for 24-25, about $226,000. For what's pending, though, we have about $1 million total for pending and actuals. For financing our debt service, we made a payment for October. It was due in October. We paid it back in September. Next payment due would be April 1st. Typically now we receive that invoice about a month before, so it gets paid in February or March. And then just kind of highlighting what we're kind of going into over the next month or two. Primarily just continuation of submitting state reimbursements, reimbursement packages, and then the agency itself. We have our audit underway, and the direct assessment bills have gone out. So the roll was already updated, and we're kind of rolling forward with that. So I'll open up for any questions.
So Sean, any problems with accuracy on the actuals going out?
None so far. I haven't encountered anything as far as accuracy, like any discrepancy in the accuracy. Yeah, no, everything's been pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, not like I thought there was, I just thought I'd ask.
Certainly. Any other questions?
All right, Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation earlier. I thought it was very informative. So I was glad Mike Johnston was available for us. So this is our program project update. Next slide, please. So for our levee improvement projects, so Feather River West Levee Project 1, I have good news on the environmental resources mitigation, cultural resources mitigation we've completed. But environmental, that's the Starbend and Matthews properties. We've been talking about that for almost 2 years at least now. But all the documents are finalized. They're at the escrow office and they're closing. I think by the end of this week is what we're thinking, if not early next week. So we're pretty much done. So it's a huge milestone for us, and it's been a long time coming. So Andrea and I are very happy to report that we are very close to completion. On our right-of-way transfers, as I previously reported to the board, we've acquired all the properties finally. The one outstanding property was completed. So now we've transferred. We were able to transfer the final package of properties over to the state, and they are doing their review on those, and they'll be accepting those properties. So that's great news there too. So we're pretty much completed with real estate and right-of-way for FERLIP 1. For the relief well repairs that we were doing for the modifications of those manholes, that work is completed also. So Lund Construction was our contractor, and they completed that work, and we're in the process of formally transferring those facilities over to Levee District 1. We also removed the telemetry systems that were a part of those relief wells. So we physically removed them, and we got state approvals to take those out and no longer have them report to the California Data Exchange site, and we were having issues, number one, with that telemetry communications, and then those systems got vandalized, and it was going to be very costly to put them back in place, and we convinced the state that they were not really useful, and we were able to take those out. So we're going to modify our O&M manuals to account for that so that those manuals don't reference telemetry systems in the future. So we're wrapping that up on Feather River West Levee Project 2. So that's the last bit of the Feather River, the 1.6 miles, the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project. We're at 100% design status. We're awaiting comments from the Army Corps reviewers of those documents. We completed our geotechnical investigations where we were looking for our cultural resources investigations. That work has been completed. We didn't find anything, which was great. So we worked with the United Auburn Indian community. They had monitors out there during our work. And so we'll take that information, incorporate that into our design documents, our bid documents, and be able to manage the project when we get into construction next year. We're also, working on all our environmental permits. So this project is still, scheduled for construction next year. Next slide, please. On the Sutter Bypass East Levee repair, we're at a 30% design level right now. Chris and I just participated in an independent panel of expert meeting earlier this morning, reviewing those documents, answering questions from our panel members to ensure safety. It's a safety assurance review is what their charge is. So our team now is advancing towards 65% design level. Once we achieve that level, then that'll trigger the Army Corps' 408 review for that project, as well as, advancing the environmental permits for the project. So all of that work is ongoing. We're still waiting to hear back from FEMA on the BRIC award. Essentially, we were selected to receive BRIC funding. We're still, waiting to see if they have questions as it moves forward. It typically takes, several years, but to get through that process and get an award in place and have that funding available to actually do the construction. So we're still working and waiting word from FEMA. Also, and lastly, we're coordinating with Calpine. They're helping us set up a meeting with Department of Water Resources to talk about advancing funding to complete the entire Sutter Bypass design and permitting. So we would be basically phase 2 of that Sutter Bypass East Levee repair. So we're trying to set up that meeting for next month. Calpine's assisting us because they would receive flood protection, once the Sutter Bypass is fully improved, and they're looking to advance a carbon capture project at their Sutter facility. So we're having good teamwork as we move forward with Calpine. On the City of Orville levee repair, I reported, I believe last month, that the city was not awarded the the Section 165, the pilot program that they submitted to. And so now we're still assisting the city. We're communicating with Army Corps staff to see if there's other opportunities that the federal government could provide. And Chris and I are setting up a call with the Section 165 program manager. So it wouldn't be under the pilot program, but if the city was willing to apply into that program, there may be a minor cost to the city to participate. But we're trying to get more information, and once we have that, we'll communicate with the city administrator and his team. On the federal project, so the Corps completed their 5-mile levee repair, but the leave behind was that punch list item for Feather Water District facilities, the vaults that were flooding. We went out to bid. We awarded a contract to TNS Construction, and they've essentially completed the repair work. We held a punch list job walk last week. They have a couple of minor things to finish up, and they'll be completing that contract. So that's good news there. And we'll be communicated with Feather Water District General Manager. They've been in the loop the entire time of this project, but we want to ensure that, they understand it's completed and they're taking over maintenance of those facilities. Also on the federal crediting, we thought it was going to be this month that the Central Valley Flood Protection Board would have a briefing from their staff and the Army Corps on the project partnership agreement amendment that is needed in order for us to formally transfer our credit over to SJAFCA. That's been pushed to next month in December. So, and if for some reason it doesn't happen that month, it'll definitely be January. But the state needs documents like 2 to 3 weeks in advance of a board meeting to include it in their packet, and they're still waiting for the Army Corps to finish up one of the documents related to the SJAFCA project partnership agreement amendment. So it could push out to early next year, but we have our agreement in place with SJAFCA. Their executive director is retiring at the end of this year. They're in the process of hiring a new executive director, and hopefully that person will be on board either next month or early next year. And I'll look forward to meeting that individual and advancing this credit transfer. Next slide, please. On the OWA, the Orville Wildlife Area, Robinson's Riffle project, the planning grant through DWR, the 1.1 million planning grant, that work is essentially completed. Chris's team is finalizing the report through that effort. That should be finalized very soon. The first project to kick out from that planning effort is this $2.1 million CDFW design and permitting project, which is essentially similar to what Mike Johnston talked about. It's a side channel creation, a river restoration project up in the Orville Wildlife Area, just upstream from the Robinson's Riffle, where this project is in design now, and Chris and I are looking for construction funding, and we're having series of meetings through state and private entities to look for funding to advance that project. So we believe the design and permitting project will be completed in another year and a half or so, and we'd be ready to, if funding was available, we'd be ready to do construction in probably 2026. So that's kind of where we're at, and we'll keep the board apprised of those activities. On the Thermalito Afterbay boat ramp and campground project, that project is advancing also. We're essentially at 100% design level, or we will be very soon. We're advancing all the necessary permits to make that project happen and be in construction next year. As we move into next year, we'll start planning on when we'll hold a groundbreaking ceremony for that project. And we're probably looking at April, May timeframe, but we'll keep the board apprised of that as we move forward. So excited about that one. On sediment removal, not so excited. Our director, Wade here, is texting me pictures constantly of that ever-growing island at the confluence of the Feather and the Yuba. The water level is super low right now, so it does make it look larger. I remind Wade of that fact, but it is necessary, and it was interesting to hear what Mike had to say about some of the conversations he's had with other entities about how valuable that confluence is from a migrating salmon standpoint. So I'm going to get some more information from Mike on that and see if we can use it in additional grant opportunities that we find and jump on as we move forward. So next slide, please. This is my last one. So FEMA remapping of Sutter County. We're still working on that process. We've submitted responses to comments back to FEMA just recently, so that'll take some time for them to digest those comments and advance that project. But we're working with Yuba County Water Agency on the opposite side of the river so that all of our information and mapping efforts are coincided with each other, especially in terms of water surface elevations within the Feather River. I'm going to have this standing item all flood season. So La Nina forecast for this year, next year, this winter, flood season. We'll keep an eye on things. We got some storms rolling in the next week or so. Always looking at, water releases and water coming down the system and coordinating with our levee maintaining agencies. So I just want to keep this on here so we have open discussion every month on this topic. I wanted to highlight to the board yesterday, I presented at the Society of American Military Engineers conference. It was held at UC Davis yesterday. So it's an interesting, they call the SAMI event. So the SAMIs are very interesting. It's mostly, the Army Corps of Engineers. So it had a lot of the commanders there yesterday talking about their projects throughout the, western region of the country. And then I participated in a local agency panel where we talked about how we're advancing our work, in relationship to this national program and how we get traction. And I told our story of how, our agency was formed and how we advanced all of our projects and what our mission is into the future. So it was a good presentation. I think a lot of the attendees are contractors and engineers and consultants. So put it on everybody's radar that we'll get some projects coming out next year. Lastly, we will have our board meeting next month. That'll be the last meeting of 2024. We'll set up our schedule for next year. And we already got an item on the agenda, and we'll probably have several more. But that'll be our last meeting of the year. And with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it over to you, see if there's any questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. And I encourage everyone to put that December 11th on your calendar. We're going to have a few board members retiring or leaving this board that have put in a lot of time over the last decade, probably. And so we'll be doing something to celebrate them as well. So
I have an item real quick.
Yeah.
Through the chair, Michael, this is for you. I don't know if you're aware, but they've moved monitoring devices for the Yuba north of the 10th Street Bridge. And what that means for Yuba City is we've always had, flood fighting levels based upon river levels. And so now with that movement, we're in the process of trying to determine what those new levels are going to be and how we're going to react to them. So to the levee district folks, I'm not sure if you're aware of that at all, but our staff is in the process, our emergency response staff is in the process of trying to determine what that's going to look like on a go-forward basis.
Yeah, thank you. I was aware of that, and they did move it upriver, so it's going to be like a couple of feet higher. So when you have that when you hit that trigger for monitor stage and flood stage, it is going to be a different elevation going forward. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And Drew, I'm sure you're aware of that, and that'll be, included in your protocol going forward.